So the third in our series of the Naval Casualty Second War to mark remembrance is the most historically important. We've left that till last. So we've had the ship collision with the Queen Mary, we've had the Battle of River Plate with HMS Exeter, and this is HMS Escort and its involvement in the very first action of the Second War. So Britain is declared war, Neville Chamberlain's declared war on the 3rd of September, just after 11 o'clock. And what happens thereafter, the first strike that happens is a U-boat hitting a passenger liner called the TSS Athenia with a torpedo. And it obviously this is against Hague Conventions and everything. It's a terrible disaster. On the scene are a few British ships, including the Escort and HMS Fame. Fame obviously does an anti-submarine sweep. And Exeter sends some of its men into the water. So this is just off the coast of Northern Ireland. The ship had gone from Glasgow to pick up passengers in Liverpool, including some American passengers, onto Belfast, and then was heading to Montreal. So it's hit, and there's a lot of women and children on board. The Escort itself tries to help out with all the survivors, including our man here, which is Joseph Edward Chamberlain, and he is in the water. So we've got all his belongings here, but significantly we've got the tankard, which is presented by the Donaldson Atlantic Line, owners of the ship of the Athenia, the passenger liner, marking the incident, and also a cigarette case which is thanking Chamberlain for his actions on that date. And notice the date is the 4th there and the 3rd here. It's overnight because the ship is in the water for a long time, and sadly those that did survive or didn't as well were in the water a long time, including Chamberlain. So he receives these letters of thanks from the Donaldson line, these very rare items, but he loses his life not long after. And it's on uncovering this through and piecing it together to see when he is actually on board and when he comes off the ship. And it isn't long after, so it's actually less than a year later that he's off Escort. And we find out sadly that, because this lot includes all of his, pre-war boxing programs and the bouts he takes part in. So he's a big, strong, strapping lad, and his scroll shows you a picture of him as well. But he does go on to lose his life. Now, sadly, it's because of this incident, the exposure that he is subject to in the water. And we read later in life, because we've got these pieces here, which are his daughter's birth or baptism certificate rather, and then the school victory certificate. So she's named it Pauline in 46, age 7. But much later in life, she's written in about this in response to an article which is all about this first action of the war and somebody else being given one of these cigarette cases. And she says here very poignantly, despite being a Navy boxer and all-round sportsman, the Atlantic weather did him no good. And specifically this incident, he's out a few months later. He was discharged as no longer fit for duty in 1940, spent the next couple of years in and out of naval hospitals. And when he was delirious, he kept talking about the Athenia and the pretty young girl with long hair and fur boots who had died in his arms. Sadly, my dad never recovered his health and died in September 1942. So here we have a group where, someone has been extremely gallant on the day to try and help those passengers. And the significance of this incident, so similar to the Lusitania, is that Germany went on to deny that they'd struck it with a U-boat. They said it was something that the British had done themselves with their own torpedoes to try and bring America into the war. And they maintained this throughout. They changed the U-boat's logs, and they maintained this subterfuge throughout the Second War. And it wasn't until Dönitz admitted in 1946 that this was an action of war and the first thing to happen. So an incredible thing, but sadly many lives lost as a result, including Joseph's.